The road into Millbrook felt like driving into a memory that had aged badly. A cracked painting you once admired until life showed you clearer art. Warren Hollies gripped the steering wheel of his worn-out Subaru, its interior littered with crumpled receipts, empty coffee cups, and the exhaustion of a man who once believed success was permanent. He was 52, recently unemployed, recently divorced, and had spent the past few weeks learning how to fall asleep with the rumble of truck engines outside rest stops. His wife, Sharon, kept the house, their closest friends, and most of their savings. "You'll bounce back," they told him, the way people do when they want to sound kind without offering help. His architecture job of 25 years evaporated in 3 sentences. Budget cuts, nothing personal. Maybe it wasn't personal to them, but it was personal to him. Returning to Millbrook felt like punishment, a reminder of promises he once made to himself. Yet the letter from the attorney, informing him of his quiet uncle's death and inheritance, tugged him back. Raymond Hollies was the man who always slipped away early from Christmas dinners, who never talked about jobs, relationships, or dreams. Nobody expected anything from him. Nobody asked. Nobody listened. As Warren parked in front of Penfield Law, a humble building squeezed between a hardware store and a pharmacy, he assumed the inheritance would be something equally unimpressive, a rusty shed or broken tools. What he didn't know was that Raymond left him something heavier than wealth. The hangar sat outside town like an abandoned promise, surrounded by weeds that looked thick enough to cut through tires. Its metal walls were streaked with rust and faded military paint, green turned gray by decades of sun and neglect. The padlock that sealed it looked ancient, iron-heavy, and rain-scarred. Warren pushed the key into it expecting resistance, yet it turned so smoothly it was as if the lock had been waiting specifically for his touch. The sliding doors fought him with a metallic groan until light poured inside like a revelation slowly revealed. The first thing he noticed wasn't the cold air or the smell of old engine grease. It was the shape at the center. A fully intact Cold War fighter jet stood there like a sleeping relic waiting for orders that would never come. Dust covered every inch of it, but the lines of its body, the sharp angles of its wings, still held a predatory grace. Inside the open cockpit, a pair of tarnished pilot wings lay as if someone left them for the next aviator. Warren ran his fingers across the metal, feeling the chill, the weight, the quiet authority of something built to cut through the sky. He knew instantly that Raymond had not been a loner hiding trivial junk. Raymond had been protecting something. The truth deepened when Warren discovered a leather-bound journal behind the cockpit seat, wrapped carefully in canvas like a sacred artifact. The handwriting was meticulous, the pages filled with coded notes, military stamps, and names buried beneath secrecy. For hours, Warren sat at a dusty workbench reading dispatch logs and classified pages that felt more like confessions than reports. Bright red stamps, classified, eyes only, glared at him with warnings that no longer had authority. The dates spanned 16 years of missions with vague descriptions. Cargo relocation, personnel transfer, equipment escort. It all sounded mundane until certain words began repeating: security breach, compromised route, unauthorized access. Then he found a notation that stopped him cold. His father's name, Paul Hollies, was listed beside another pilot, Jack Kendrick, not as survivors of a routine flight, but as casualties from a compromised mission. The official story told to his family that Paul died in a rainy car accident, shattered instantly. He was killed in service in secrecy because someone exposed his flight path. The journal entries shifted in tone as Raymond wrote about a pilot referred to only as Viper, whose actions raised suspicion. In one entry, Raymond wrote that Viper asked too many questions about cargo and schedules. Another entry claimed command brushed off concerns. Warren turned to the final page of one section and found a message written differently than the rest, as if it was meant for a single reader. Someone betrayed them. They buried the truth to protect him. When you find this, finish what I couldn't. Warren stared at those words beneath the flickering light, realizing his uncle hadn't lived quietly. He had carried a burden no one else knew existed. Unanswered questions pushed Warren north to a veterans facility overlooking a lake as gray as overcast memory. There he met Floyd Kensington, a thin man with trembling hands and eyes still sharp enough to carry decades of unspoken truth. Floyd recognized the name Raymond Hollies instantly, his expression softening with a respect rarely spoken. "Your uncle flew with us," he said, voice heavy with time. "Project Sentinel kept us off the books." Floyd's sentences came slowly at first, then rushed like water breaking through an old dam. He described secret missions carrying nuclear materials, intelligence officers, and classified technology. The unit operated beyond ordinary military logs. They were ghosts wearing uniforms. Then Floyd spoke the name Warren hadn't dared to say aloud. Hugh Brennan, a pilot with a gambling addiction and dangerous debts, protected by a senator father who could bury any scandal with a phone call. "Your father wasn't unlucky," Floyd whispered. "He was betrayed. The mission that killed Paul and Jack Kendrick wasn't an accident. Brennan sold the flight route. Raymond tried to expose him, but the investigation was shut down by officers who shared Brennan's last name." Floyd handed Warren a worn brass compass, its back engraved, to Raymond, true north. "He asked me to keep this safe until someone came asking," Floyd said, eyes shimmering. "I didn't think it would take this long." The compass felt heavier than metal. Warren realized Raymond had never quit. He simply waited for someone who could carry the truth further than he ever could. Returning to the hangar no longer felt like returning to a property. It felt like returning to a graveyard of silence and responsibility. Warren sensed eyes on him before he even pulled into the gravel lot. That same dark sedan lurked like a shadow that wanted to be seen. Threats didn't need flashing lights or badges. They just needed patience. Warren didn't panic. Instead, he went straight to a bank downtown and sealed the most incriminating documents in a safety deposit box, leaving only copies in the hangar. Later that night, as wind rattled the metal walls, his phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm, calculated, and disturbingly familiar with Warren's personal life. It offered him relief, financial security, and freedom from unnecessary conflict if he simply sold the hangar and walked away. No mention of justice, no acknowledgement of death, just a demand to stay silent. The caller implied consequences if he refused, speaking with the kind of authority that never needed to raise its tone. Warren stared at the fighter jet while holding the phone, realizing he was being tested the same way Raymond once had been. Silence wasn't protection, it was purchase. Warren hung up slowly, not out of fear, but with certainty that he was being offered a chance to betray his father in the same way Brennan once betrayed him. His answer was made without a single word. The next day, Warren wasn't alone. Fiona Templeton arrived with a reporter's notebook, a sharp gaze, and a determination that could cut through steel. She listened to every detail in silence, then spoke with the precision of someone trained to dissect lies. She photographed the jet, studied Raymond's notes, and mapped out mission routes on her laptop with surgical focus. When she heard Floyd's name and learned he was willing to testify, her expression shifted from interest to conviction. "This isn't military history," she said softly. "This is a suppressed crime." Within hours, a luxury SUV pulled up outside the hangar, carrying two men who claimed legal concern for classified property. Their suits were expensive, their speech carefully worded, but their threat was unmistakable. They wanted the plane, the documents, and Warren's silence. Fiona stepped between them and the evidence with calm professionalism, invoking constitutional protections neither expected to hear. They left with polished warnings and a business card that pretended to offer solutions. Warren and Fiona spent the next hours backing up every file, duplicating every photograph, and storing data in places no single court order could reach. Under harsh fluorescent lights, the fighter jet seemed to loom over them like a witness waiting to testify. Raymond had maintained it as if expecting someone like Fiona to one day walk through those doors. Warren knew then. Exposing the truth required more than evidence. It required someone unafraid of power. Fiona was that person. Night settled over the hangar with a heavy stillness, the kind that forces the mind to listen to questions it would rather ignore. Warren climbed into the cockpit one more time, not out of curiosity, but out of respect for the man who preserved it. His hand brushed against a loose radio panel that didn't match the jet's meticulous maintenance logs. When he pulled it free, a small cassette wrapped in plastic slid out. The label carried Raymond's handwriting, "For Warren, when ready." The old tape deck on the workbench crackled like a dying campfire. Then Raymond's voice filled the hangar, stripped of secrecy and formal restraint. He sounded tired but determined. He revealed that he and Warren's father were supposed to fly that doomed mission together. But Raymond became ill, grounded by pneumonia, forcing another pilot, Jack Kendrick, to take his seat beside Paul Holly's. Raymond lived because he was sick. Paul died because someone else was. Raymond explained that the truth wasn't only about exposing Brennan, but about acknowledging that loyalty had consequences when power protected the wrong people. He left the jet intact not as memorabilia, but as evidence. He spent decades labeled as eccentric, unstable, paranoid, not because he was wrong, but because he wouldn't surrender to silence. "When you find this," his voice said with a breaking edge, "don't chase revenge, chase the truth. That's how you honor Paul." The tape clicked off. The hangar felt different, less like storage, more like a courtroom waiting for testimony. Warren understood that Raymond had never expected gratitude, only continuation. Some families inherit money, land, or heirlooms meant to decorate mantles or sit behind glass. Warren inherited unfinished duty, a mission left in the hands of someone who had never been asked to serve until now. Justice wasn't an opportunity, it was a debt that had matured over half a century. His father never got a funeral that matched his sacrifice. His uncle never received respect for loyalty. And men like Hugh Brennan were allowed to thrive behind gated estates, protected by wealth and politics while truth was buried beneath paperwork stamped classified. Warren saw